Welcome to the Region 4's Maintaining Mental and Behavioral Wellness virtually sessions. My name is Dr. Lakeisha Kearney, and I am the Social Emotional Learning and Mental Health Specialist here at Region 4. This session is entitled Trauma-Informed Practices for All Environments. I'm going to begin today's session with a brief overview of the definition of trauma and what we may see in children during this time at home. We're going to discuss evidence-based practices for support of individuals that may have experienced trauma, and we're also going to identify some suggestions for mitigating and creating environments of support. Although the COVID-19 pandemic is creating widespread anxiety, not all children or adults are experiencing it as stressful. The level of stress experienced is impacted by our resources and our relationships that play a role in a person's life. So, to begin, we're going to define some terms that we're going to be using for today's session. Stress can be defined as the physical, behavioral, and our mental responses we have to perceived threats of our safety and well-being, and in large amounts can be counterproductive to our daily routines and relationships. The Substance Abuse Mental Health Administration, SAMHSA, indicates that individual trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. Another definition of trauma, offered by the Center for Nonviolence and Social Justice, denotes trauma as experiences or situations that are emotionally painful and distressing, and that overwhelm people's ability to cope, leaving them powerless. Both definitions highlight the notion that trauma is a response, not an event. It is important not to assume that any particular person or child definitely did or did not experience something as trauma, even when the event is shared. In addition, it's important to note that the significant influences that determine whether an event is seen as traumatic or not to a person can be known as the 3 E's. So that can be their impact of events. What are the events or the circumstances? Is this a one-time occurrence or repeated event? Could be the experiences, which are influenced by one's culture or developmental stage, and it could be the effects. Any physical, mental, cognitive, behavior, social, spiritual effects that can either be recognized or unrecognized. Another important definition we want to highlight is resilience. Resilience, according to Ann Maston, is the process of capacity for or pathways and patterns of positive adaptations during or following significant threats or disturbances. Finally, the concept of trauma capital, or the changes in perceptions of self, improvement in deepening relationships with others, and an increased ability for expressing emotions to find meaning in the trauma experience. It's important to highlight some reminders for those wishing to operate under trauma-informed practices. We want to make sure that we use the term trauma as a lens, not a label. This is a lens by which we can understand children and their experiences. And we want to make sure that trauma is not a destiny. We know that we can produce healing and growth out of traumatic environments. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network has identified possible signs that children are experiencing an event as traumatic, indicating that the levels of distress really depend in part on their age and their level of development. Here are some things to look out for. Again, recognizing that this is a lens and we're not labeling particular behaviors that we may see as trauma per se, but just some things to be on the lookout. In preschool and younger school age children, They may experience feelings of helplessness, uncertainty about whether there's continued danger, a general fear about all aspects of their lives, and having difficulty describing in words what's bothering them or what they are experiencing emotionally. Many times, these feelings of helplessness and anxiety are expressed as a loss of previously acquired developmental skills. Children who experience traumatic events might not be able to fall asleep on their own. They might not be able to separate from their caregivers. So those things could be described as a loss from things that they were previously able to do. We can help young children by offering support or by providing comfort, rest, opportunities to play. Caregivers can be available to provide reassurance that the children are safe. It is helpful for parents, families, and teachers to help children verbalize their feelings so they don't feel alone and they're not left alone with their emotions. And that can be done through modeling expressions of how we as the adults are feeling. For school-age children, traumatic experiences or events may elicit feelings of persistent concern over their own safety or the safety of others in their school or family. They may describe being overwhelmed by their feelings of fear or sadness, and many times children in this age can display sleep disturbances, which could include difficulty falling asleep, fear of sleeping alone, and frequent nightmares. There can also be difficulty concentrating and loss of learning. Children at this age may also complain of headaches and stomach aches without any obvious physical cause, and some children may engage in unusually reckless or aggressive behavior. We can help these older school-age children by providing encouragement to express their fear, sadness, and anger, offering the supportive environment of the caregiver. School-age children may need to be encouraged to discuss their worries with adults, and it's also important to acknowledge the normality of their feelings. So making sure that we are letting them know that anything they're feeling at this time is normal, and we don't want to make it seem abnormal for them. When we are addressing adolescents, many may feel self-conscious about their emotional responses to the event. A lot may have feelings of fear, being vulnerable, and concern over being labeled abnormal or being seen as different from their peers. And that may cause them to withdraw from family and friends. A traumatic event for adolescents could foster a big shift in the way they start to think about the world. And some adolescents may engage in self-destructive or accident-prone behaviors. We can help adolescents by encouraging discussion of the event and their feelings and expectations. We can also discuss what is expectable. We expect that there could be a strain on relationships with their families and peers, and we want to offer support in those challenges. It may also be important to help adolescents understand that any acting out behavior or behavior that is atypical from how they usually behave could be an effort to voice their anger, and we want to make sure that they express those feelings. We offer up these recommendations because when people are faced with difficulties or have traumatic experiences, it affects their sense of safety, ability to be calm, sense of connectedness, and their sense of hope. In order to establish a sense of safety, we want to make sure that we're reaching out, we're providing space, and we're encouraging talking about the safety concerns. With young children, we really want to be patient, especially when they are being clingier with the caregiver and or the educator. With older students, we want to let them know that while they may be worried or thinking about their problems, they also have the capacity to figure out what they can do to help themselves feel better. For caregivers, we want to make sure that you limit or avoid watching news about the current crisis or the economy in front of children, as that news may be very upsetting. We encourage caregivers to keep regular family routines as much as possible, making sure that children are getting enough sleep, they're eating regularly, drinking plenty of water, and getting some physical activity. For educators, we want to keep the routine that has been established either prior to distance learning or during distance learning as much as possible, and also to encourage students to share their feelings and thoughts with the group or by reaching out to staff members one-on-one. For both caregivers and educators, children may have very strong feelings about the uncertainty in their lives. We want to make sure that we let them know that when they start to feel anxious, angry, or sad, they can distract themselves by doing relaxing and fun things, focus on things that motivate them, or focus on ways they can take action to help themselves or others. We also know that exposure to traumatic events can affect a person's ability to be calm. We can expect feelings of frustration, fear, anger, hopelessness, difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, eating, and having the ability to not want to be around others. That all can be observed. And in stressful times, anybody, adults as well as kids, can seem more emotional. And when those emotions run high, it can interfere with our routines and getting tasks done. Often when we are upset, we don't want to reach out. We avoid reaching out because we don't want to worry other people, or we don't want to risk being judged. The goal for caregivers and educators is to establish a sense of calm, an ability to become peaceful in their mind and body, being able to relax, stay composed, making sure we're not shutting down or becoming agitated. Being able to relax your body and mind also will help focus on and concentration for learning. We want caregivers and educators to model being calm and using calming actions. Not only is that great self-care for the adults, it also teaches the kids those skills. We also want to provide reassurance with simple and effective messaging. For example, you're reacting in an understandable way to a very difficult situation, right? As we discussed earlier, what you're feeling is normal. We want to model, teach, and review effective problem solving by breaking up problems into smaller steps. And we definitely want to urge students to engage in enjoyable activities, listening to music, playing games, making sure they stay connected to family and friends. Traumatic experiences can also affect a person's sense of connectedness, especially in the current COVID-19 pandemic where social distancing and stay home, stay safe orders are in place to keep us safe. In isolating ourselves, however, we miss out on positive interactions. We miss out on sharing with other people about our troubles, receiving understanding and compassion. We miss out on a sense of well-being from helping others and distracting us from our worries. Connectedness is having relationships with others who understand you and support you. We want to make sure that we encourage physical distancing, but not distancing ourselves socially by encouraging the use of technology to bond with others. We can help children identify trusted friends and family and adults with whom they enjoy spending time and make sure that we warn them against isolating themselves. Finally, we know that experiencing an event as traumatic can lead to a loss of hope. There may be a feeling of discouragement, hopelessness, anger at the people in positions of power. We want to encourage hope as the expectation that things will work out and a feeling that everything is going to be all right. To do that, we can have children ask people who they respect how they can stay hopeful in troubled times. And we want to make sure we are building them up by giving them positive affirmations or sharing a strength that we see in them in order to build that sense of hope. We can use trauma-informed practices to foster feelings of safety, security, and connection, even during distance learning opportunities. Remember that trauma-informed practices should not be simplified into cookie-cutter practices. They can vary for different teachers and students, but we want to make sure that there are some priorities to make sure that they are truly trauma-informed. The first priority is predictability. Trauma can create intense feelings of unpredictability. And whether children have experienced trauma or not, this COVID-19 pandemic has upended normal life for kids and adults. And with the loss of our usual habits, one way educators and caregivers can prioritize predictability is by creating routines. Educators can transfer their usual opening activities to a message board or conversation during distance learning, for example. And just as teachers might normally have scheduled calming activities such as read aloud after lunch or recess, doing that same activity and having the opportunity to connect before jumping into instruction will help students if they're in distance learning. Flexibility is the second priority. Because trauma involves a loss of control, inflexible teaching methods can trigger some students into survival mode. So teachers are encouraged to notice that students need and collaborate with them to find routines, resources, and strategies that best support them. While physical schools typically provide some level of uniformity, at home, the learning environment for each student looks different. And so some students we know have limited internet or computer access. Some students have varying circumstances where they may be caring for younger siblings. Now is the time for educators to really prioritize what's most important in the learning environment. Also, we want to make sure that educators ask caregivers for insights about what their child is needing right now. For some, schoolwork gives them a healthy focus. For others, self-care may be the priority. The key here is to stay flexible. Creating connection is also a goal of being trauma-informed. Relationships are key to resilience. Anything that teachers can do to help foster relationships should be the priority right now. Paying attention to make sure that we're not sending out impersonal emails that simply reflect a student's logging in status, but really striving to make personal connections with families and students that demonstrate that you care and that you truly are interested in their well-being. Finally, the goal of empowerment is one that can ensure that your practice is trauma-informed and it can build resiliency. Trauma takes power from people, so trauma-informed educators need to think critically about not reproducing that dynamic. Rigid expectations can really create barriers to learning for trauma-affected students, and so we want educators to focus instead on empowering students and including them in shared decision-making and authentic choice. Making sure to seek out consent, permission, gaining input before unilaterally moving forward can build empowerment. Empowerment also can apply to assignments. Now more than ever, busy work should not be the goal. Giving students problems to solve and what they're interested in, giving them tools to think about how they're being affected in the world around them can really help to build empowerment. In summary, how can we make sure we are engaging in trauma-informed work? We can focus on connections, helping adults connect with youth, helping families and communities connect, and helping peers connect with each other. We can focus on helping children and youth grow developmentally appropriate skills in all domains, whether that's communication, social, emotional, and to effectively navigate their environments. We can reduce experiences that undermine perceived caring by promoting opportunities for belonging. Our trauma-informed care work should be promoting consistency, predictability, choice, should be highlighting significant relationship building, fostering safety, and providing empowerment and opportunities to build self-worth. With the right relationships and opportunities to make meaning of this experience, trauma can be a source of positive power, and we can build trauma capital. That is a quote from Leora Wolf-Ralston. Thank you for joining the Trauma-Informed Practices for All Environments, a part of the Region 4 Maintaining Mental and Behavioral Wellness virtually series. We hope that you have obtained some practical tools to take and use immediately. Please feel free to review and take advantage of the other great resources available on the webpage, and we hope you can join us for upcoming sessions updated weekly. Thank you.